Hi there. Welcome to the Imperfect Profit podcast for women who wonder. Frankly, as we go through life, I'm sure we wonder about a great deal. First as little kids, then as adolescents, then as young women, then as transitional women. What are we calling ourselves these days? And then you get to this point in life, or my point in life, when you're postmenopausal and wondering what's next. Wondering if the parade already passed you by. Join me, Wonder Wendy. I'm going to be your host as we talk about some of these unique challenges that face women today in a new millennium, going through menopause and trying to live a rich, full life. There might even be a few men and younger women that want to listen in too. That's okay. But there's a roller coaster and we're all on it. And I'm going to be your guide to help you figure out when you should close your eyes, when you should hang on, and maybe we'll explore some ideas for what works for you if it doesn't work for me, or vice versa. So join the conversation, pick up your favorite beverage, and we'll talk to you soon. Welcome to the Imperfect Prophet.
Hey there, everybody. I have my cup of coffee, and I'm ready to have another conversation. How about you? When this episode drops, it's going to be Easter Sunday. How did we get to that date on the calendar? April 5th. 2026. It's just a few days after the beginning of Passover. Two traditions, both rooted in reflection, in liberation, and renewal. You know, we're all kind of returning and remembering. That used to be a big homecoming day for me when I was a kid. My brothers and sisters would all come back for Easter, and we'd have a big family day. I was an aunt at the age of 10, so when I say family day, there were little kids, there were brothers and sisters. There was a lot of food and a really big table. But we all came back to that something essential, going to church together. When you hear those words, returning and remembering, what goes through your mind? What's special about this time of year for you? So I don't have the big family dinners anymore. I now live closer to the West Coast than most of my family. And often it's just my husband and I. But as we're talking about dinner, I'm thinking about last week when a friend called me and said, I'm going to this thing for my birthday. It's a dinner. I'd really love for you to come along. I said, sure, it's your birthday. Why not? And then I looked up where the ticket link was, and it said Ayurvedic dinner. Now, I quickly went to Google and said, what is Ayurvedic? Because I had absolutely no clue what she was talking about. But how could I say no? So in the worst case scenario, I would eat something unfamiliar and have a good story to tell. And as you all know, as regular listeners, I love to tell a good story. So I'm always out there having great experiences so that I have more stories to tell. And I hope you are doing likewise. I have to be a little bit honest about this, though. Being from Vermont, I will fully admit that when I heard Ayurvedic dinner and Googled that, I had a picture in my mind. And the picture in my mind probably says more about me and my background than what I was walking into. I expected patchouli, maybe a little incense, some grungy, hippie, humming in unison kind of vibe. And instead, I walk into a beautifully decorated courtyard and met 9 dynamic women. This was an incredible, energetic, beautiful event. These women were not only not late blooming hippies, they were well-dressed. Some were in heels and a few with hair so gorgeous that I was pretty certain they'd had a blowout not too long ago. And that was just the beginning of my revelations, because I also expected, rules. Restrictions, a list of things you have to give up to live this healthy lifestyle, no sugar, no alcohol. Yeah, forget the fun, right? Here's my caffeine boost for the morning. They're going to tell me I have to do something holistic like tea or matcha. I don't know. But instead, I heard something completely different. They talked about balance. It wasn't about restriction or deprivation. There was no list of things to get rid of. Thank God. And there was that word again, Ayurvedic. I know. Ayurvedic. It's a mouthful, isn't it? Now, you might hear that word and think, like I did, what the heck is she talking about? But stay with me, because what I learned that night is that at its heart, it's actually very simple. An Ayurvedic life is a life lived in balance, not perfect balance, not some rigid, unattainable idea. Whew, but a living, breathing balance between your body, your mind, and the world around you. It comes from an ancient system of health. It's called Ayurveda. Big surprise there, right? And it all starts with this idea that you are unique because you are. And we've talked about that. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to say you have to do what I do because we're both different. But this is being unique, not in a poetic feel-good way, but in a practical daily life way. Ayurveda says that each of us has a kind of internal blueprint, a natural constitution. And the goal isn't to change who you are, it's to understand who you are. And then live in a way that supports that. So instead of pushing through exhaustion, you ask, what would restore me? Instead of following someone else's routine, you ask, what actually works for me? Instead of living disconnected from your body, like we do so much of the time, you begin to listen. Ooh. And that's really what an Ayurvedic life is. It's so remarkably simple that it's hard to believe that somebody has to teach you that. But we do. It's learning to live in conversation with yourself. And here's where it gets a little complicated for a lot of us. That's a conversation we haven't had for maybe a long time. Okay, so back to the dinner experience, not what I researched on Google. Before we sat down, we were introduced to the idea of something called doshas, Doshas, 3 energies, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, if I got that right. Basically air, fire, and earth. And we were guided through a simple exercise to notice which energy was most present for each of us uniquely in that moment. Not today, not tomorrow, in that moment. And surprise, surprise, mine was fire. But here's what came out of my mouth next, almost before I could think about it. I don't want to consume and burn. I want to rise and glow. And instantly my mind went back to January. You may remember the podcast episode where I talked about my vision board, to that image, front and center of a phoenix, not burning to ash, but rising from it, transformed by it. And the doctor leading the event smiled, because she knew that is the shift. That is the work that, well, I need to do. Because Ayurveda doesn't say get rid of your fire. It says use it wisely. Ugh. There's the challenge part. I need to channel it, transform it. Don't burn myself down with it. And let's be honest, as women, we are often inclined to burn so brightly that we use ourselves up. We literally burn out. Yeah. And somewhere along the way, we started calling that normal, even admirable. Oh, she does everything. She's amazing. But here's a different way of looking at it. Instead of burning out, warm from it. Let it sustain you. Glow from it. These are all the life-giving things that fire gives us. And yet, as I sat there with that idea, I realized something. This wasn't just about energy or philosophy. It's about every day of our life. How are we living our lives? So much to think about. I'm so glad I accepted that invitation. Again, another lesson, just say yes once in a while. Try something different. Go into a new space because you never know what you're going to learn. After that realization, it was time to sit down to dinner. A long table, fresh food, yes, vegetarian. But I will tell you, those grains were so satisfying. I was full, not just full, but satisfied. Those two are very different things. How often do you eat until you feel uncomfortable, but you still want something else? That wasn't the case with this meal. It was satisfying. And there was no urgency, no grabbing for more. Okay, the sauce, each one of us got a sauce that matched our air, fire, earth symbol sign. Those are pretty awesome. And okay, maybe I reached for a little bit more of the sauce because it was a great flavor. But there was no sense that something was missing. It wasn't like, wow, this would be better with a steak. No, it was great. I had the realization that you could be full and still malnourished. And we see it all the time. We see people who are overweight and unhappy with their bodies and still wanting more food. Their bodies aren't satisfied. They're malnourished, even though they're receiving too many calories. Overfilled and undernourished at the same time. We see that in food, but we also see it in life. You can have the career, the house, the relationship. The calendar says you are very important because you're always busy and still feel like something is missing. And that's exactly what I heard that night, because that dinner conversation evolved into a sharing circle. I won't tell specific stories because it was a safe space and each person's story is their own to tell. But I'm going to encompass that into one thought, because our hostess encouraged us to introduce ourselves without talking about our careers and our titles. Have you ever done that? It's real easy to say, I am an engineer, healthcare giver, whatever the tech space may be. I'm a mom, a wife, a volunteer. But who are you? What is moving you forward? It was really interesting to think of myself in a very different dynamic and say, this morning I was excited by, and I want to share with you. And this is what I've learned. This sounds a little bit like some of my recent episodes, doesn't it? Well, the universe echoes sometimes. If you're really listening, it's going to tell you you're on the right path because you'll hear the same messages over and over again. Now, most of the women around this table were in their 40s. I think I was the oldest woman at the table. They were all accomplished, almost intimidating to me, to be honest. Very capable, very impressive. And they were all tired. Not tired like I need a nap or I had a bad day. No, they were tired like I've done everything I was supposed to do. So why doesn't it feel the way I thought it would? They all grew up with a message that says, you can have it all, just find balance. That's easy. As if balance were something you could achieve once and knock it off the to-do list. But you can't. That's not the whole truth. What if the question isn't, how do I have it all? But instead, do I even want it all? Because constantly aiming higher without ever asking why, well, that's just plain exhausting. Let's go back to the concept of burnout, even if fire isn't your element. And this is where I went back to Icarus from Greek mythology. I brought him up in the episode Once Upon a Time a couple weeks ago. He and his father did the ultimate Pinterest project. They did the impossible. They built wings, collecting feathers and using wax to hold them all in place. They experienced something extraordinary. They flew. At a time when man had no concept that anything other than a bird could fly, Icarus and his father took flight. But Icarus, he got caught up in the exhilaration. It was really, can you imagine taking flight? Even I, who have flown an airplane, can't imagine having wings affixed to my arms that allowed me to fly freely, although I've had dreams of that. But Icarus, he gets so caught up that he flies higher and higher, forgetting that it is wax that holds the feathers in place. And as he gets closer to the sun, the heat of the sun melts the wax, causing his wings to disintegrate and him to plummet to the earth. I want to be careful here because I'm not interested in telling any woman to fly lower. If your goal is the stratosphere and you believe that's where you belong, go for it. But I do want to ask, at what point do we stop enjoying the fact that we're already flying? Think about that. At what point does it start to become something you need to do even more? You become driven and you go higher and higher than you even needed to go. You were fine soaring for a little while, enjoying the wind, the sun, the drift, the ease of flying like that hawk that just holds in the sky. That moment, this moment right here is the one we dreamed of, taking flight. At what point do we soar instead of constantly striving? Sitting there, listening to these women, feeling that incredible energy, that sisterhood, I realized something. This moment in life, their moment in life, I hate to say I'm kind of at a different stage now. This questioning, this longing for something more, I've been there and it's not new. We've just started telling the truth about it. There was a time when we called this a midlife crisis, and it was mostly assigned to men. All those movies in the 60s, I think they might have even started in the 50s, 60s, 70s. The guy who hits the midlife, he's wondering if there's more. He suddenly gets a sports car. He has a big reaction. Like that makes me think of Mad Men, the TV show or the cable show, where the character is falling through the credits over and over and over again. I kept waiting for John Hamm to go out a window. He never did. Anyway, to me, that is the epitome of the male midlife crisis, the dramatic reset. He experiences a quiet dissatisfaction, sometimes in work, sometimes in relationships. And yes, the all too familiar story of him pulling towards something or someone new, younger, a way to feel vitality again. So we've seen that played out in the movies and on TV for decades, especially if you're my age. But now women are having the same questions. We've been in the workplace for decades now, too. Not always in the same outward ways the guys do, although some women do go out and get a sports car and some women do get a younger lover and whatever, breast implants, lip, whatever. We get the things. But it's still that same quiet, persistent feeling. Is this all there is? And maybe even more quietly, is this all I want there to be? It's so complicated and layered with achievement and understanding of ourselves and expectations. Our identity, I was supposed to be, I want to be, they expect me to be. And yes, add in that magical component of hormones. Perimenopause and menopause don't just shift your body. It's not something you can take one pill for. It sharpens the question, is this the life I actually want to be living? The other day I was watching TV and Savannah Guthrie was interviewed after weeks of living through a personal nightmare, the abduction of her mother. And I heard one line, "My joy will be my protest." I wrote that down immediately. My joy will be my protest. Because that is not the reaction I expected her to have. I never expected to hear those words. Because here is a woman in the middle of something unimaginable. Fear, grief, uncertainty marking the days, the hours, the minutes of her life. And then layered on top of that is the kind of question so many high-achieving women carry. Did my success somehow invite this? Did I fly too high? Did being visible come with a cost? That kind of guilt, that kind of questioning, it can take you down fast. It can make you question everything. Your choices, your ambition, your visibility. And yet she's made a choice not to shrink, not to dim, not to abandon the very life she has built. Instead, she's standing strong and saying, my joy will be my protest. And I thought, what a powerful reframe. Not denial. She's not avoiding anything. She made a conscious choice about how to meet what's in front of her. Because maybe the answer isn't to push harder, or climb higher, or prove more. Maybe the answer is to choose joy, to choose alignment, to choose a way of living that actually supports who you are now. Not the version of you who is striving or proving or chasing something just out of reach, but the version of you who is ready to live fully, right where you are. And suddenly that Ayurvedic dinner that I got randomly invited to by a good friend, so I guess it wasn't random, but the universe made it feel a little bit random. It wasn't random at all. It felt like someone adjusted the lens and brought a whole lot of things into focus for me. Not just about food or wellness, but about how we are choosing to live. That you don't need to overhaul your entire life. You don't need to give everything up. Because I've seen a lot of women pull back to the point where they lose sight of who they were. And you don't need to become someone else. You simply need to notice, where am I out of balance? And what is one small way, maybe one small daily or weekly adjustment to help me work my way back to feeling whole? Not a complete overhaul, not a dramatic reset, because you don't have to take care of everything in one day. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to have it all figured out. Who told us we had to have it all figured out? Ugh. You just have to come back to yourself again and again and again. Sorry to tell you, it's not a one and done experience at all. And for your sanity, please do it without judgment, without urgency, just returning and remembering and understanding yourself better. And that, my friends, might just be one more way to live a wonderful bucket list life. And maybe why in this season of rebirth and renewal, we are invited, whether you call it Easter or Passover or simply the spring equinox. It's a moment in your life when something shifts. And it's always the same invitation. Let something go. Something begin again. Start something new. It's your own personal resurrection. Not by burning brighter, not by living in a way that you can't sustain, but in a way that actually sustains you. So you can rise and glow. I can't wait to see you soaring. If this message resonated with you or made you think of someone, I'd love for you to share this episode with somebody else. Tell them why it appealed to you or why you thought of them. And until next week, stay hydrated, drink the beverage that appeals to you, stay curious, stay open, and have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you soon.
Like what you heard here today? Then we should be friends. I suggest you join my Facebook group. It's a good way to connect. We can have a conversation. Ask me questions, whatever you want to do. It is called the Wonderful Bucket List Life. That's Wonder-Full Bucket List Life. Be a bucket lister and join me on this adventure. Or you can go to my webpage, which is Wonder Wendy and Friends, join the mailing list, learn about the book I wrote, adventures that are coming up in the future, and other podcasts. I look forward to talking to you soon, and stay hydrated. Have a great day.